us. Welcome to Dulcimerica.
So thanks for being here. What I'm doing with each of the sessions, some of you are taking different sessions, some of you are staying with your track, with the beginner's track, but I'm doing basically the same sort of arc for each one of these sessions, and that's going to be, I like to break up my rehearsals to 3 specific points. One is technical, working on exercises to help build up agility and familiarity with the instrument. The second is repertoire, where we'll learn music, learn some tunes, and increase the amount of songs we have in our head. And the third is to come at the instrument without having to think about it too much. Just play it and improv and make things up, because we spend a lot of our time learning other people's stuff, but it's also real nice just to sort of make things up because you learn a lot about the instrument. So I see that looks like everybody has a seat belt except for you and Don. And you got those, okay. So my recommendation for you guys is maybe this week have Richard Ash drill you a couple of strap buttons if you don't have those on there. Doesn't look like you do. Put a couple of strap buttons on there and then get yourself a nice little breakaway strap that you can get into and out of quickly. And the reason that this is really helpful, I mean, I've been playing mountain dulcimer since 1986, and we could have used guitar straps and stuff like that, but there were no breakaway straps, I don't think. But everybody was kind of a little freaked out about drilling holes in your instrument, so we didn't do that. And we had, things like that to keep it stable. But we also largely played with the dulcimer like this, right in front of us. And this is kind of problematic because you can't get to the second octave because you're in your own way. That, and if you want to get there, you have to do the dulcimer lean, which is this, and it's so bad for your back to do that, That, and every time that you would press down really hard, the dulcimer's flipping around on this side because you've got this weird balance thing happening. So it's actually better to get the dulcimer away from you on a diagonal like this. And the seat belt will make that so that it's not precarious at all. But what happens is, first of all, you got the upper bout of the dulcimer over your knee here, and that supports it and keeps it from moving around too much. And then this opens up the second octave, so you can actually reach that second octave, no problem. And you also don't feel like you're, closed in a tight space. You got more room to extend your arm, and this flows a lot more nicely. So ergonomically, this is a better setup. But without the seat belt, it can be very difficult to hold it far away from you like this and not have it to be too squirrely. So what goes along with that is just your posture in general. Sit up nice and straight. I don't like to lay against the back of the chair like this. It's reclining, it's taking you away from the instrument, while sitting up straight puts you where you're more towards the instrument and ready to get into it. Feet flat on the floor. Sometimes I'm guilty of playing and I'll do these little kid things like this or whatever, which is fine, but after a while your feet are gonna get really tired from doing all this stuff. So try and make it as easy as on yourself as possible. Like this, get the dulcimer away from you like this. So about your pick, hold it out in front of you like this, and hold it with the thumb and forefinger. And that's really all you should be putting on top of the pick. You shouldn't be doing the 2 fingers and the thumb, because what happens with that is you've got a fulcrum going on. You've got 2 fingers and you got 1 finger. And if you go like that, it'll actually bend the pick. And you're not going to be doing like this consciously when you're playing. But when you bring this pick in contact with the string, that's exerting force. And by nature of the thumb pressing in this way against 2 fingers, it's going to bow. The pick's going to bow. And when the pick bows, it changes the surface tension of the pick, and it changes the sound. And it's just more ergonomics and stuff that you don't need to be dealing with while you're trying to play. Otherwise, this keeps it nice and simple. Just the thumb and the forefinger, and make sure that the point of the pick is going straight down. So if you're holding it like this, and then you put it down and you find that the point is going this way, but this is going to be the attitude that your hand is going to have, then just rotate the pick down from there, and then you'll get a sense of how to grab it. But always want to make sure that pick's like a record needle, that's going straight down, so that you can actually get in contact with the strings that way. And you want to go nice and light on your grip on that. Hold it like you feel like this thing is about to drop out of your fingers. Just make sure that you're not squeezing it too tight. And here's the reason why. Hold it nice and light in front of you, and then feel right here. It's nice and loose, nice and relaxed. Now squeeze the pick just a little bit. Feel what happens inside there? All that contraction of muscles is going to keep you from having a nice fluid strum because you're just too tense in here.
That's why this got sore.
Yeah, exactly. So what you got going on here is you want this to be as nice and relaxed as possible. So nice light grip on the pick, nice easy flow with the hand, and we're going to strum right here. This area here is called the strum hollow. So you would think that you're supposed to strum there, and people do strum there, and it's not a problem. But it sounds better if you strum right about where your lower tone holes are located. That's called the sweet spot. Take a listen to what it sounds like when I strum from the sweet spot closer to the bridge, which is down here. Hear how tinny and nasally that sounds? Now watch as I go back to the sweet spot. Sounds really sweet right there. So you're going to direct your strumming, most of your strumming here. What I tend to do is I strum here, but when I flat pick, and that's when you're picking notes individually, notice how I came down to the shallow end of the strum hollow? I don't want to go too deep into there because the sound there isn't the best, unless I want that sound. I want that warmer sound I had here. So I'll go just to the end of the strum hollow so that my pick, as I'm picking the notes individually, doesn't hit the fretboard. That can get annoying after a while if you're going for those. So I come down to the edge where I know I'm not going to hit, and I can get in there and flat pick. All right, so nice loose strum. And to finish, I'll look at some of the anatomy of the dulcimer. Besides the strum hollow and the bridge, there's the nut, and the nut and the bridge are these little pieces of material, either wood or bone or micarta or delrin, where the strings go through. They feed through there. And this is the headstock, and these are your tuning gears, and then the tuners, and these actually shorten and lengthen the strings by tuning them here. They're attached down here next to the bridge. The only area the usable area of the string as far as being able to play it and hear it is in between the bridge and the nut. And that space right there is measured as a VSL, vibrating string length. And that is the length of your instrument that you can play. So most people, it's about 28 inches. I don't know what Michael sets his at, but 27, 28 inches is pretty standard. 25, 26 is starting to get into ginger territory, which is a smaller scale dulcimer for people maybe with smaller hands or who want a higher pitch. And then you get, 18, 17 inches are usually these miniature dulcimers that are kind of fun and kind of cute. But 27 to 28 is pretty standard for that vibrating string length. All right, so 4/4, the top number is how many beats are in the measure. So you get 4 beats per measure. And the bottom number 4 is what gets the beat, and that stands for the quarter note. Here comes the math. So let's start off with whole. That first measure contains a whole note. That whole note gets every single beat in the measure. So we get 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the count. It's a big open circle. It's clear in the middle. There's no stem on it, so you know it's going to get everything in the measure. Next to that, we're going to cut the whole note in half, and you end up with 2 half notes. And each one of those gets 2 beats. So we would count that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one of those is clear, but there's a stem on it, so you know it's been chopped into pieces just a little bit. Right next to that, our first black notes, those are the quarter notes. There are 4 of them in a 4/4 measure. And the count is simply 1 per each. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We can then divide each of the quarter notes in half and get 2 eighth notes. So inside of each quarter note, there are 2 eighth notes inside. So when we count through the eighth notes, we've got 8 total in a measure. Remember, there are 2 eighth notes for each one of the quarter notes. We have to add the word and to account for the 4 new notes that have been brought in. So when we count 8 notes in the measure, it becomes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Notice the 4 count is still there. That lets us know that's where the quarter notes would live. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and when you're starting to subdivide more and more, keeping that 1, 2, 3, 4 count first and foremost in your head is super important. Just kind of make sure you know where everything is. and that you aren't getting lost in the count, which becomes very easy with our 16th notes down here below. 16 notes, we take an 8th note and cut the 8th note in half, you get 2 16th notes. For every quarter note, there's 4 16th notes being played in that same space. And to account for all of these extra notes, we need some more nonsense syllables. 1, E, and So we've added E and to our and for the 8 notes. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and that's the full count for the 16th notes. We're not even going to bother with 30-second notes. They're just there for comparison. They are scary, and typically they're more rhythmic than they are melodic. But if you've ever watched the TV show CBS Sunday Morning with, I believe it's Wynton Marsalis playing the flugelhorn, the notes that you hear spilling out of his trumpet are 30-second notes. That's pretty darn quick. But he's a Marsalis, and he probably does it in his sleep. It's pretty good stuff. So back to the 16th notes. Take a look above the 16th notes, and you'll see those bars connecting them. Whenever you see 8 notes and 16th notes bonded together, they're going to have that bar. But sometimes you'll find one 8th note and one 16th note hanging out by itself, in which case it's going to have a stem on it, just like the quarter notes, but it's also going to have a little flag on there to let you know which one it is. So look above the 8 notes, and you'll see that bar connecting them. There's one bar, one black line, just one. If one of those 8 notes was by itself, it would have a stem and just one flag. Little tiny flag flying off of there. 16th notes, look at that bar. There are 2 bars. There are 2 bars that connect 16th notes. And when a 16th note is by itself, it has a stem with 2 little flags hanging off of it. So you can spot them very easily in a measure. So 2 bars or 2 flags, 16th notes, 1 bar or 1 flag, 8 notes, no bar, no flag, quarter notes. And that's the basic breakdown of all of the durations. Pretty much you're really going to be dealing with, you won't see a lot of whole notes in Dulcimer music. You just won't. Our music's a little bit more lively than that. Every once in a while you may see one, or you may see a dotted half note. A dotted half note you'd find in 3/4 time pieces, and it actually gets everything in the measure. You will see a lot of those where one note will get every single beat in the measure, but beyond that, not a whole lot of whole notes. You will see a lot of half notes, you will see a lot of quarter notes, but mostly you'll be seeing 8 notes and 16 notes. And I'd be running into those quite a bit. So I have a practice cadence here that'll help us get our motor calibrated. Take a look at the practice cadence page. That's going to be this one right here. Now these pages, some of these pages are from my book, Method for Beginning Mountain Dulcimer, which is an exhaustive compendium of all things mountain dulcimer and music theory, and it has exercises, audio exercises. So that's what you're seeing here, is that these are exercises. For every exercise in the book, you can actually play it, listen to it first, and then see it. I believe in getting all the senses involved so that we can soak all the information in as best as possible. Practice cadence, here we go. So you see we've got just the quarter notes, the 8 notes, and the 16th notes. And we're just going to do that in a 3-measure cadence. And a cadence is just an arrangement of rhythm. And this is an awesome thing to get used to building your tool set up with your strumming. Now, take a look down below and you'll see our count. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the quarter notes. And although they're kind of small, you'll see above the numbers there, you'll see a little triangle. And that's a strum directional arrow. It's telling you which direction to strum. If you are primarily an outward strummer, then you would strum outwards on those numbers. If you're primarily an inward strummer, then you would strum inward on those numbers and just use the arrows as an orientation for which direction you should be going.
Is there one that's right, one that's wrong?
No, as far as comfort, a lot of people are comfortable doing this first as opposed to going out first. So, I'm all about making sure people are as comfortable and happy as possible when they're playing the dulcimer because it's so cool. You know, you don't want to be stressed out. There are certain instruments where just holding them puts your body in a position that's not comfortable. You know, like fiddles. Fiddle players are always complaining about how they have to keep this and this and this. And mountain dulcimer players just kind of go, you know, not a big deal. So strumming outwards on the numbers. Now right here, the 8 notes. Here's our count below. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But also take a look at that directional arrows and notice how they're going out on the numbers, but they're coming back in on the and. So you want to use that return trip to play your other 8 note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But when you're doing the quarter notes, just out 1, 2, 3, 8 notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then finally the 16th notes, which is the same basic thing, in and out strums going back and forth, and our count 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and we'll do this a whole bunch so it really gets settled in here. Let's go ahead and start off with our quarter note strum. So we're in the strum hollow, got a nice light grip on the pick, and we're just going to strum outwards like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, good. Okay, those are your quarter notes. Very, very simple. No hurry, no rush. That's like we're not worried about bringing that strum back in again because we got all the time in the world, man. We're just kind of playing quarter notes, not a problem. 8 notes, little more urgency, not a whole bunch, depends on the speed of the song, really. But we're going to use that return trip and go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So let's go ahead and do that. This is going to be 8 notes. 8 notes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, good, good. Now we'll do 16th notes. Now here's where people get a little tripped up. We are pretty much doubling our note capacity, which means we are going twice as fast with our hand. But that's only because we're adding in 8 more notes. We're not actually speeding up the tempo, and that's what people tend to do. They tend to like boom and go ultra fast. But you want to stick inside the tempo that's been set by those quarter notes. So it requires a bit of patience to do it at the same speed. So I'll show you how to do that, and we'll start off with quarter notes. I'll do this as a demonstration, and I'll show you. And I'm going to bring my electric tennis racket in next time I come in here because this fly is just asking for it. I love zapping them with those things. It's so satisfying. It's like, buzz in my face, will you? Anyway. So we go 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. So with my left hand, I've got the quarter note beat going. So you can see how it works in relationship with the 8 notes and 16th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. So what you can do with the 16th notes is you can play that one note, that second note, that third note, that fourth note on those beats. Play it a bit louder, like a choo-choo train. Choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo-choo. What ends up happening is you will loudly hear the 1, 2, 3, 4 count in your 16th note. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 choo 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 choo. Because that whole one-y and a thing, unless you're used to doing it, it might be a little weird. Just think choo choo train and you got it. So you don't really want to, you are speeding up, but you don't want to speed tempo up. You just want to speed up in order to get those notes in. So let's go ahead and try the quarter, the 8, and the 16th note. Yeah.
I know you rest your fingers, do you hear most of the time?
Yep. That's called anchoring or posting, and I always hesitate to suggest it to people because it's one more thing to think about. And the things that often, and this is a good time to mention this actually, as you're doing things throughout your mountain dulcimer journey, you might do something to help solve a problem that you aren't even sure what the problem is. It might be this dulcimer swirling around a whole bunch. Maybe if I do this, it'll stop doing that, and then you'll keep doing that. And then one day you'll realize that it helped you out and you don't think about it anymore until someone says, why do you do so-and-so? And you go, I don't know exactly, but you did it because it was necessary, right? So that came out of necessity because I was standing up as a mountain dulcimer player in a rock band, and I wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to be flying all over the place when I move. And I boogie a lot when I sit down, and if you are moving and you aren't tied to your dulcimer and you are doing this, you can see where your accuracy would go right out the window. What this does is it anchors me to the dulcimer. No matter what I do, I'm going to keep my location where it is, and that means my accuracy is going to be a lot better. My consistency will be a lot better. But again, like I said, if you find that by playing this way that you are kind of getting air and then you're too deep in the strings and whatever else, maybe then say, let me try what Bing was doing. But only if you think you've got a problem. I wouldn't start doing it now because it may be just one more thing that you're thinking about. It may actually get in the way of you developing a nice strum. So that's why I, with caution, would say, that's what I'm doing, but wait and see if it's necessary for you before you start doing it. Because there are benefits. I wish I could freehand strum. There are a lot of things I think I would do better, but I boogie too much when I play, so this is what I have to do, So we're gonna go quarter, 8, and 16, and we'll take it nice and slow. Just watch your tempo with the 16th notes, and remember that pulse, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and play each beat. The first of the 4 beats, play each beat a little bit louder, and you'll be able to hear it. Here we go, quarter notes. I'll count us in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 16. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1/4. 2, 3, 8 note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 16. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E quarter. 1, 2, 3, 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 16. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a quarter. 2, 3, 4, 8. 1 and 2 and 3 and 16. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E quarter. 1, 2, 3, 8 note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 16. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E quarter. 1, 2, 3, 8. 1 and 2 and 3 and 16. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. Let's focus on the 16th notes for a second. We'll slow it down and I'll show you a couple of things. First of all, 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and so we're just doing the same thing as the 8th note, but we could play a little bit louder with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and if you slow it down enough and listen to it, you can get this really cool rhythm and hear where everything needs to go. The problem is, most of the time we're playing 16th notes, we're not going that slow. We're like ripping along, you know? So 1 E and up, 2 E and up, 3 E and up, 4 E and up. Let's do that kind of in eighth note territory speed, and then we'll speed it up gradually. Part of the problem is lack of definition. When you're going like this, the drone pretty much makes everything blend together. It's really hard to hear the spaces in between the beats. So this way we'll be able to hear it with more definition. So we'll go 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and a little bit faster. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and all right. Now let's do the 4, 8, and 16 together now. And then we'll move on a little bit after this, and we'll do some more practice stuff. Here we go. With quarter notes beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 16. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a quarter. 2, 3. 8 notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 16, 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. All right, good. I do see progress, and I think that a lot of that is repetition. It's doing it over and over and over again. And I mean, I can tell you, I know that it is super, super boring to do technical stuff. And repetition is the big thing. Because if we do it thoughtfully and if we do it correctly, we are just programming our organic computers with all the right information to do the job that we want it to do. And so it's really important to sometimes be really terribly slow and boring and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and make sure you have all that stuff around. What you can also do if you don't have a mountain dulcimer with you, beats are beats, no matter what you're playing them on. You can just sit while you're driving in traffic with your hands on the wheel and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. You can do it wherever you go. Tabletops, counter counts. You can use utensils or no, you know. If you get really, really fanciful about it, you could actually walk and do the same thing. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. Bury that cadence in your head, in your bones, in the very nature of your spirit, because what you want to do eventually is you don't want to think about this at all. You know, if I'm starting to play something and I want to do a different rhythm, I'm not going to go, you know, it'd be really cool if I put a quarter note next to an 8th note and then tied it to a 16th note. I think I'll do that in the next measure. You ain't got no time for that. All you got to do is say, here's the feel I want, boom, and go. It's split second. It comes from the gut, it comes from here, and it shoots to the hand, and the hand delivers. And that's what you want to do, because we got more than enough to worry about with the left hand. We'll be thinking about that quite a bit, but we don't want to think about this. So the rhythm, apart from being absolutely the foundation of everything we do, is also something that we don't want to think too much about, because it needs to be something that's on demand. It's there when we need it, and it's there to do what we need to do. So we can focus on this side, which is what we are about to do.